Well, here's an article that I'd like to share with everyone. Actually, it was written by Michael Clare, who is a professor of peace and world security studies at Hampshire College, and he's been the author of several books. Now, normally I don't read articles like this in their entirety, but because I don't want it to be taken out of context, and since the article is rather short, especially as far as my videos go, I will read it in its entirety so that it should not be misunderstood, because this article is in no way taking sides, but it rather clarifies the situation for an American audience which might not be aware of what is going on between Georgia and Russia and the larger picture involved. So the headline, the title, not the headline, the title of this article is Russia and Georgia, All About Oil. In commenting on the war in the Caucasus, most American analysts have tended to see it as a throwback to the past, as a continuation of a centuries-old blood feud between Russians and Georgians, or at best as part of unfinished business of the Cold War. Many have spoken of Russia's desire to erase the national humiliation it experienced with the collapse of the Soviet Union 16 years ago, or to restore its historic sphere of influence over the lands to its south. But the conflict is more about the future than the past. It stems from an intense geopolitical contest over the flow of Caspian Sea energy to markets in the West. This struggle commenced during the Clinton administration, when the former Soviet republics of the Caspian Sea basin became independent and began seeking Western customers for their oil and natural gas resources. Western oil companies eagerly sought production deals with the governments of these new republics, but faced a critical obstacle in exporting the resulting output. Because the Caspian Sea itself is landlocked, any energy exiting the region has to travel by pipeline. And at that time, Russia controlled all of the available pipeline capacity. To avoid exclusive reliance on Russian conduits, President Clinton sponsored the construction of an alternative pipeline from Baku in Azerbaijan to Tbilisi in Georgia, and then onward to Sayan on Turkey's Mediterranean coast, the BTC pipeline as it is commonly referred to. The BTC pipeline, which began operation in 2006, passes some of the most unsettled areas in the region, including Chechnya and Georgia's breakaway provinces, which are now being contested. With this in mind, the Clinton and Bush administrations provided Georgia with hundreds of millions of dollars in military aid, making it the leading recipient of U.S. arms and equipment in the former Soviet space. President Bush has also lobbied U.S. allies in Europe to fast-track Georgia's application for membership in NATO. All of this, needless to say, was viewed in Moscow with immense resentment. Not only was the United States helping to create a new security risk on its southern borders, but more importantly, was frustrating its drive to secure control over the transportation of Caspian energy to Western Europe. Ever since Vladimir Putin assumed the presidency in 2000, Moscow has sought to use its pivotal role in the supply of oil and natural gas to Western Europe and the Soviet former republics as a source both of financial wealth and political advantage. It mainly relies on Russia's own energy resources for this purpose, but also seeks to dominate the delivery of oil and gas from the Caspian states to the west. To further its goals in the Caspian, Putin and his protege Dmitry Medvedev, until recently the chairman of Gazprom, the Russian state gas monopoly, have enticed or browbeaten the leaders of Kazakhstan, Turkmenistan, and Uzbekistan into building new gas pipelines through Russia to Europe. The Europeans, fearful of becoming ever more dependent on Russian-supplied energy as its only source, seek to build alternative conduits across the Caspian Sea and along the route of the BTC pipeline in Azerbaijan and Georgia, bypassing Russia altogether. So, my friends, this is what it's all about. It is about the control of energy resources. So it is against this backdrop that the fighting in Georgia and South Ossetia has been taking place. The Georgians may only be interested in control over an area they consider part of their national territory, but the Russians are sending a message to the rest of the world that they intend to keep their hands on the Caspian Sea energy spigot, come what may. This doesn't necessarily mean occupying Georgia outright, but they will certainly retain their strategic positions in Abkhazia and South Ossetia. For all practical purposes, daggers aimed at the PTC in particular. So even if a ceasefire is put into effect, the struggle over energy resources in that region, sometimes hidden and stealthy, and sometimes open and violent, will continue long into the future. Now, this article was written on August 13th, and since that time, the U.S. has decided to have a strategic agreement with Poland, basically putting a missile defense system right along Russia's border, which they have objected to vehemently over the years. So no one should be thinking that this is any kind of thing which means de-escalation of any conflict. If anything, the hostilities will continue. So someone eventually will have to back down, and hopefully both sides will see the light before that big white glow of a nuclear bomb goes off someplace.